Douglas and Svetlana Productions in life. Have good weather today and good sun, and my dog, my wonderful husband, won't say you some story.
Okay, so I talked about John Bedini about a week ago, but I didn't save it. I think I'll do that again because it's super interesting story. So I really like John Bedini. I asked him some questions on email and he was really super nice to me, and nothing bad to say about him, except this story is weird. So first of all, I got a call from someone in Los Angeles. I can't remember his name, and he just called me out of nowhere back about 15 years ago or so, and he started talked a whole bunch, and he said he was at a conference, one of these free energy conferences somewhere, and somebody in front of the whole audience went up there and gave John Bedini $7 million, a check for $7 million in front of everybody. And so that's what he told me, and he says, I was there, I saw it, you know. So I was thinking, well, that's good, you know, somebody's helping out the free energy guys, and it's probably how he got his really nice lab and could put so much time into it and everything. So that's all good. And then I met this guy named Bart who lived in Toronto, and this guy's super advanced. He made a truck that ran on water with a couple other guys down in Texas, and he drove it all the way up to Canada. And Bart also did all sorts of other things, and very advanced. And anyways, I went to Toronto and stayed at his house for 3 days. He also had Brian Prater, the guy who made a lawnmower, self-riding lawnmower with no batteries, no nothing, just ran on capacitors, and then some helicopters burned down his lab, and big story. But Brian Prater stayed at his house for like a month or two with his wife too, which is interesting. So he's up in Toronto, this guy named Bart. And hey, how's it going? There's some people coming down here. And then there's another guy who lived up in Toronto. He built his own boat with a concrete hull, kind of in his backyard. He was on the beach there, a guy named Warren Keeler. And he sailed this boat he built. He like fabricated everything himself. It's just amazing. A beautiful schooner, I guess it is. I think it had 3 big masts to it, I believe. And he settled that to Venezuela a few times. This guy, Warren, has like golden hands. He can make anything, build anything, make it work. And Warren also did the rotiverter and got over Unity without doubt. Yes. Anyways, but Warren and Bart decided to go visit John Bedini in Idaho. So they got some plane tickets and they went over to Spokane and then went over to see him over in Idaho. And the story is Bart and Bedini were in the other room, or they went for a walk or something, and they left Warren alone in Bedini's lab. And inside the lab, this is Warren's story, he had a Howard Johnson permanent magnet motor, like a real simple prototype. And he said the magnets were kind of just broken and kind of jagged edges and stuff, but it really worked, and he was playing around with that thing. And here comes a military plane, it looks like, really low altitude right there. That's odd. And so anyways, the story is Bedini and Bart were talking. They maybe had some common friends or something. And Bart asked him, like, did you ever have any, like, problems and stuff? Maybe harassment, something like that. And John Bedini said, yeah, there was one time after a conference, I had to hide in a dumpster for 3 days because some people were after him or something. And so that was crazy. And so that's what Bart found out from talking to Bedini, that at one point in his career, he had to hide in a dumpster for 3 days. Somebody was going to kill him or something. So now armed with these two stories, that somebody gave Bedini $7 million at a conference in front of the whole audience, plus Bart being told by Bedini that he had to spend 3 days in a dumpster once, hiding in a dumpster. Bart said he had a friend of his wife's over at his house, and I think he was Russian, I'm not sure about that, but he worked as a hitman at some point in his life. And which kind of scared me. He's like, God, you know, a hitman? And so he said he was just, I guess he's all reformed and a nice guy or something. So they say. So anyways, he said he was talking with this guy, this ex-hitman, friend of his wife, and he said the name John Bedini came up in conversation. And he said the guy's face just went white. It's just like, just went white. And then he told Bart, the hitman, ex-hitman guy, told Bart that he had a contract and he was supposed to kill John Bedini, but he was a nice guy and I didn't want to do it, is what he says. And I told him to hide in a dumpster for 3 days. And John Bedini was with somebody. It was maybe Ron Cole, or maybe it was his brother. That's a little foggy who he was with. Original story was Ron Cole, but later on someone said that was his brother he was with, hiding in the dumpster. So now Bart is freaking out because he just had Bedini telling him personally that he had to hide in a dumpster for 3 days, and now this guy's telling him that he told him to hide in a dumpster. And so it's probably true that he did. Now knowing that he also had got $7 million presented to him in public at a conference. I told this to Bart. I said, you know what, Bart, I had this guy call me up and tell me that he was at a conference and somebody gave $7 million right there in front of everyone. And Bart wrote me back. I think I told him that in an email. I didn't tell him then at the time. Maybe I did. I don't know. But anyways, Bart wrote me back in an email and he says, yes, what happened is that there was some mafia boss down in Florida. He was really a mean guy and he even killed his own brother. And this guy was who gave John Bedini the $7 million. Maybe not personally, but through an agent or something. I don't know. And John Bedini was supposed to do something for this guy. And I don't know what that is. And Bart didn't know what it was, you know. But he was supposed to do something for him. Maybe give him his patents. I don't know what it was. And but he didn't do it. Apparently John Bedini did not do what he was supposed to do, and so they sent this hitman after him. And then according to the hitman, he wasn't too much of a nice guy and he didn't want to kill him, and he just told him to hide in the dumpster for 3 days. But in my world of conjecture, what I think happened is the guy, the hitman, told him, hey, I'll let you go, because he knows you got $7 million. I'll let you go if you maybe give me like, I don't know, 200,000 or three, good amount of cash. And I'll just let you go, and I'll tell my boss that I couldn't find you, or I killed him, or something. Just tell his boss something, and he'll let. So basically, a deal was made. I'm making this up, but I think it's what happened. A deal was made where the hitman was going to let him go if he gives him some money, of what he had. So that's why he had to wait 3 days, because the check had to clear the bank. It takes about 3 days for the check to clear the bank. He paid off the hitman. The hitman story is that he was a nice guy. I didn't want to kill him. And however, I kind of doubt that. So anyways, so this goes into the death of John Bedini, where his brother and him died within 2 hours. I talked to Aaron Marukani, and who knows John Bedini pretty well. They're part of that group up there in Spokane with Lindemann and all those guys. They put the conferences on every summer over in Idaho, and usually Bedini's there. So I told him this story. I'm just telling you guys, and he said, oh no, they were at a restaurant and he had a heart attack and he fell into the lap of his sister right there. And but he doesn't think there was any hanky-panky. Like what I'm thinking is the mafia guys caught up to him. Hey, this is this John Bedini guy. Like he sees him on the internet. Hey, we can't let this go. And they killed him and his brother. And his brother was in charge of all his business and finances. So But this is a wild conspiracy theory, but you know what? The people who hate conspiracy theories are the conspirators usually. I just heard that on a podcast last night. But so, who knows what's true, but I'll tell you, it was true. He hid in, as far as I know, he hid in a dumpster for 3 days, and somebody gave him $7 million. And then Bart said it was the mafia guys from Florida, mafia boss, that gave him that money, and John did not do what he was tasked to do. I don't know, maybe he was betting on some horses with that, for all I know. Probably, I bet you it had to do with his patents or something. Maybe not, who knows. So, there's an interesting story. And it's not saying anything really bad about John Bedini. God, I'd take $7 million. I was at a conference and someone gave it to me. But if I found out it was the mafia, I probably would pay it back and get the hell out of town. But maybe John did that. Maybe he did. And who knows? But this is all interesting story. So, okay, I'll go to the next story about Eugene Mallove. Also, I told a story about him earlier in an earlier live stream, but I didn't save it. And this is like the year 2000. And this is when I was just getting started out. I made the Conehead motors. I went to the KeelyNet conference down there in Dallas. I got invited. It's the first time I ever spoke in front of people about my motor stuff. So I built this motor. It's like a gray motor. It had bucking coils north against north that spin around in a rotor. And then there's bucking coils on the outside, and that gives you your power. The gray motor was very high voltage discharge, cap discharge, but I did it at 12 and 24 volts because I didn't want to mess with all this high voltage. So I made this kind of mini gray motor, and then I discovered putting magnets on the stator would re-gauge the coils in the rotor so that you get a free power stroke. I won't go into that, it's a little complicated, but it's pretty simple. Basically, you change the polarity of the core and the rotor as it passes by a magnet right after it's been pulsed north. So now when it goes past this magnet, the magnet is at such a distance that it is just enough to change the polarity of the core, flip it from north to south. And people think that maybe you can do that with flyback, but you can't. Flyback doesn't really have any current to it. It doesn't, you can't really flip a core with flyback. Maybe if you let it go into a cap for quite a while and hit it. But anyways, but a permanent magnet out there on the stator as the rotor coils sweep by will flip the polarity. And then so on the approach for the next north-north power pulse, it's before on the approach, it's actually north-south, and it attracts naturally. So that's called re-gauging the cores. So anyway, so I built this thing. Plus I elongated the cores and I packed pickup winds. You have the motor coil like in the front of the core, and then behind it you have these massive pickup winds, so it's like a transformer effect every time you pulse the coil. And anyway, so I made this thing. It was pretty good. All these people were saying it's over Unity, but you know, whatever. And so Eugene Mallove got wind of this thing from this friend of his who lives in El Paso, Texas. This guy has known Mallove for 20 years, he says. And so this guy in Texas contacted me and wanted me to send him a couple little prototypes, so I did, and he said he can set me up with Eugene Mallove, who has this big lab. He has employees, big lab. He wrote all these books. He's an MIT professor. He's like a cold fusion advocate, and he also gives out grants to people, and he has all this funding. He told me that one of his main guys was Isaac Asimov, that author, and so he has all this funding. He has a big lab. He has employees. He gives out grants. He's just like the go-to guy in the world of free energy and whatever else. And so he took some interest in me, and he wanted me to go over to his lab in New Hampshire. I live in Seattle, so he paid for the tickets, and I went over there with my Conehead motor, I called it. And basically it was a battery swapper. It would run on batteries at X amount of power input, while it would charge up stacks of batteries of greater power than what goes into it. So you could swap. It was a battery swapping sort of looper where you could run it on some batteries, and then over time you can swap batteries, run batteries with charged batteries, and you do it like every few days or a few hours, whatever you want, whatever works best. So it's a battery swapping looper, you could call it. And here's some kids. There's kind of a step right there people are going. Kind of. So anyways, oh, look out. Okay, so I fly over there, and we're supposed to get $7 million. It's always $7 million. And I was going to split it with this guy in El Paso, Texas, who knows him. So he set me up. He says, hey, when he gives you this grant for $7 million, we'll split it. I say, okay. And apparently Mallove has this big cold fusion reactor. Hector calls it a sono fusion. It has a frequency to it. It's sonic or something, I don't know. But so he had this cold fusion reactor that was self-sustaining, and he had it in a great big plywood box, maybe 20 feet tall, at his lab. And he told me I can't look inside there, but apparently that's where his big reactor is. And Mallove was a big shot, so he was having what was it, the week after he died, he was murdered he was beaten to death in the driveway of his mom's house where he grew up, and it was a rental house, and he kicked some renters out of there, and they got pissed and beat him up, is kind of the story, and they left him for dead, but he wasn't dead, he was just beat up, and some other people returned, and then they killed him, and then these other people stole his van. I was driving around in his van, I know what they were talking about, and they arrested all these guys, and then they and you read about it, and about 2 years later after they were arrested, this was I think 2003 when Eugene was killed, and they put these guys in the jail, and then about a year later they let these guys out of jail because they say it was the wrong people or something, and then these other guys went to jail for it. But as far as I'm concerned, it was a hit, because he was on the Art Bell radio show talking about how great cold fusion is, and you can... Okay, give me 1 more minute. I'll conclude this. And his stuff, scaled up, could run cities. And he was a bulldog. He just fought and argued with everybody. And he was... Okay, I'll meet you back at the car. Okay. Can you wait 1 minute? God. So where was I? Okay, the day after he was on the Art Bell radio show talking about his cold fusion stuff, that's when they killed him. 3 days before that, Popular Mechanics issue came on the newsstands, and the cover photo was a picture of New York City being blown up by an atomic bomb with a big mushroom cloud, and then the title on the cover said, "America's worst nightmare, atomic bombs built in your basement using cold fusion technology." And then they had a great big article in there about Eugene with pictures in his lab and everything, and it was nothing to do with that. So that came out 3 days before. The day after he's on Art Bell, plus he had a meeting with the DOE, Department of Energy, the following week to get like really big money, like maybe billions or something, I don't know, and to fund cold fusion research. And that was the following week. And it's interesting, the DOE, I gotta get going here, I'm gonna start walking. The DOE is what handles all nuclear materials and nuclear weapons and nuclear reactors and nuclear power plants. It's all under the supervision, I guess, of the DOE, Department of Energy. You can look that up. And what the big battle still is there's hot fusion, where they try to contain a nuclear explosion, kind of contain it within a really strong magnetic field. This is hot fusion, then they can just kind of pull out power. And they're the ones who get all the billions in funding, and they still do. 25 years later, they still get all the money from the government. And it's always, oh, give us, we've almost broken through, or we have broken through, we got some reaction. And that's hot fusion, and hot fusion hates cold fusion. Cold fusion is hydrogen electrolysis, more or less. And so anyways, he was supposed to meet with the DOE following week. And I think they decided this guy's too serious. We're just going to have to kill him. And I was sure that was a hit when it happened. What happened with me was I went there, and he treated me like the next Jesus Christ when I got there. He was just overwhelmed. He was so happy. He's saying that all these people we give grants to, they just have like a paper, a technical paper and a theory, and they figured it out. But he was so happy because I had a working prototype right there. And so when he bought like about 20 of these 7 amp hour 12 volt batteries, brand new. And so the test was going to be, you run it on 2 of the batteries and you're charging like 10 of the batteries, something like that. And So he told me to leave, go back to the hotel because I got there kind of late, and then in the morning we'll do your tests. Okay, so I went back to the hotel, and so I came back in the morning, and now he's completely changed, completely different person. He was reading a newspaper, hiding his face, and he wouldn't even put the newspaper down and talk to me when I went in there. And I thought, God, this is weird. What did I do? And but I noticed that these were brand new batteries, and when we did the test, the thing didn't work. What happened is on the plane ride over, which is another story, the shaft of my motor got shoved back about half an inch, and everything was all messed up. There were sparks coming out of it, so the test didn't go very well. And he said, I don't want to see a battery swapping thing. I want to see the battery running it go up in voltage. So when you do that, make me a video and send me the video after you achieve that. The battery running it goes up. So, took me a few months, but I did it, maybe 2 months. I got it so it runs on very little power, and the battery's going up. And so I took a video, and then the next morning when I woke up, that was when all the buildings blew up in New York, 911. And that freaked me out like everybody else. And so now I don't want to send this to this Eugene Mallove guy. Probably get me killed. And he was still alive then. I didn't know they were out to get him at that time, but I was like, God, I don't want to stick my neck out. And where's my car? Here it is. So that's what happened. And then so I never sent him that. I just kind of went semi-underground. And then I read about him getting beat up, and I knew it was a hit because of the fact of it. Popular Mechanics magazine having the cover story the day after he was on Art Bell radio show. So anyways, I gotta go now, but so there's 2 stories, Bedini and Mallove. Okay, hey, thanks for watching. I gotta have my wife turn this off and save it, because I still don't know what I'm doing. Can you turn this off? Say thank you for watching and save it.
Okay. Thank you for watching and goodbye.